Sunday in the Breakfast Club, and I am Serious Mind. I know we're not doing the round robin currently, but I thought I'd respond anyway to Sword Sage's video. He asked the question, do we need middle management, and can't people just go off and start their own gig and bypass all that? And well, the short answer is absolutely yes. That is the case. I've done that. Um, I started my business in 2009. Now, I'm not in manufacturing per se. I support manufacturing. I do automation, control system integration, and so forth. Which I'm one of these days I am going to do a video explain what all that stuff means. But you know, I started my company in 2009, and it's been going. Revenue's been growing and growing. We had some down years. It started off really good in the beginning, and we had a couple down years in between. But we've been going like gangbusters now, and I'm actually trying to hire. But so the thing is, I guess what I'd say is, I said the short answer was yes, it can be done, and I actually hope more people will do exactly that because, in answer to some of Sword Sage's other questions, for me it wasn't so much middle management; it's more of upper management. I find that, particularly when I worked for large corporations, that the people at the top making the decisions were so far divorced from what was actually going on to get the product made or the service produced or whatever, that made you wonder how they were making these decisions because they really didn't have a feeling or a grasp on what was going on. There may have been some here and there, but I've said on numerous occasions in my life that I never needed a CEO that was up on high in order to get my job done. And, that's probably true for most people. I think part of the problem is that somewhere along the line, things shifted in the United States, and I guess elsewhere too. Some of the companies that I've worked for that had grown to become very large, when they were smaller, they were started by people who knew how to do whatever it is that they do. Kind of like in my case, I still do billable work, as we say. And over time, that's happened less and less. And a lot of these companies, companies that are traded on the various stock exchanges, the people who run them now generally have management degrees, and very often have no knowledge, no working knowledge of the industry they're in, or how the products are manufactured or the services are provided. They just have a bunch of management speak that they learned in college. And a lot of what they do is really based on job security. You create these auspices and these rules that people have to follow, and then, of course, you get to enforce them. That's mostly the case. There are some exceptions, though, and this was the part of the long answer, is that while what you can go off and do that, it's generally a lot more complicated than is apparent. And this is something that I learned when I started in business. I remember thinking early on, like, well, if I could have a situation where I had four people working for me, I know what I can charge, I know what I have to pay, and seeing four people working for me doing billables plus myself, that I could bring in X amount of dollars. But when you start actually looking at it, there's a lot more to it. You have insurance, liability insurance of various types, professional insurance, and then if you do have employees, now you got to start offering benefits because you're really not going to attract good help if you don't. Even though I was saying to Steve Shives the other day, where we were hanging out, and we don't have. I'm not required because I'm a small company to provide health benefits, but if I don't, I'm not going to get anybody. Now, that's a little different in the case of a partnership or a co-op, which is what you were actually describing, Sword Sage, and you may not be aware, there actually are companies that will operate that way. The thing is that when you start adding on people, you add complexity to the situation. So, if you're going to have healthcare, if you're going to have various benefits and so forth, then you end up needing people to administer that stuff because, as you said, the people who work on the factory floor or the manufacturing environment, they know how to do that. Well, that they're not experts at taxes. They're not experts at 401ks and compliance, regarding that, and liability insurance and all these things, and something that I've had to learn over time, and I hired somebody to do that. The True Puka he's my business manager, and he does a lot of the administrative stuff, that high end stuff that. Could I do it? Yeah, but if I did it, then that means taking me away from actually, bringing in the money. So that's why he's there, and he's good at it. Business development, customer relations. He wears a lot of hats. And this is for a small company, but we still needed a certain amount of management. What I call facilitators. In any manufacturing enterprise, you're going to have the producers, and you're going to have facilitators. And facilitators are there to take care of the necessary functions that have to happen, but to free up the producers so they can spend their time, doing the things that make money. So it's a lot more complicated. And, I found, that I had in my case, I had like $30,000 a year in annual software licenses, and rent, because we have to pay rent. We're renting an office. So many different things that you never thought of. Some of them you might have, but until you actually have to sit down and do it. So, and in the case of manufacturing, it gets a lot more complicated because now you're talking about, bringing in raw materials and managing inventory, managing stock of your finished product and send it out. And so it's not that it can't be done, because it can be. It absolutely can be done. But it's not quite as simple as a lot of people think, and that's something that was very eye-opening for me, having been on both sides now of the coin. I will say, looking back, I definitely see in a lot of ways what the managers that I worked for did and the people above them. There was just a lot of really stupid stuff, a lot of time-wasting things, and that was one of the things I wanted to do when I started the company. I had the choice. I could have gone back and worked for other people, or start my own thing. And I decided that I was tired of putting up with meaningless garbage that didn't in any way provide a product or service for the customer, didn't generate revenue, didn't save money, nothing. It was just a waste. And so I've tried to avoid that stuff as much as possible, and only do the things that are necessary. But I do see, as the organization grows, that it's going to require at least a certain level of management. Now, the thing is, in a co-op situation, it's somewhat different, because now the people that you're dealing with, you don't work for them. You're partners to some degree, whatever the how many shares people have, and how the responsibility is broken down. So it's a bit different. So and you then have more say in what goes on. But you do have to be careful, because notoriously committees are fairly ineffective. So very often it takes having somebody to kind of drive things. And in my company, that's me. That's my role. And sometimes I remind some of my employees, they worry about certain things, and I say, well, no, that's my thing to worry about. You don't need to worry about that. You need to worry about these other things that these tasks that I put forward. And they mean well, but sometimes there needs to be that separation, sometimes. And if I had partners, then we would all do it. The other issue too that a lot of people don't really understand is when it comes to cash flow. You can look at your books and say, wow, we got a lot of money, but then realizing that you've got a huge amount of money in open invoices that work you've done or product you produced, and you've you've given whatever it is to the customer, and now you're waiting for them to pay because they don't pay. It's not like when you go in the grocery store and you get handed some groceries and you pay money. Think that there's net terms, and so very often you're waiting 30, 60, 90 days sometimes to get paid, and that can really be tough. So it takes a mindset of people that are prepared for that, because that's the difference between a co-op and working for somebody else, is that in a traditional setting, say, the management has taken on a certain level of responsibility. The owner has taken on a certain level of responsibility. I'm going to make sure everyone gets paid. I'm going to make sure all the bills get paid, and so forth and so on. And you, as an employee, don't have to deal with that. You get to come in, do your job, and go home, and not have to worry about it at night. In any decently run company, anyway. But if you're at the top, I know there's been times when when you have bad times, and it means then that not everybody's going to get paid, or everybody has to accept not getting their full paycheck. There's been periods, even when on the books we had a lot of money outstanding, there was a pretty healthy sum of money that we were due, but because it hadn't come in yet, and when we were smaller, it was harder to kind of force customers to be more prompt. That I had to go many weeks without getting paid. And so as long as everybody knows that going in and agrees to that, and they're willing to accept those risks and accept those consequences, then it absolutely can work. But a lot of times people aren't prepared for that. And I think the most I went was like 17 weeks without drawing a paycheck, and that's a third of a year. And it was infuriating too, because it's one thing if that's happening because you don't have revenue coming in, you say, well, okay, what am I doing wrong? I gotta find more customers, or try to get more work out of my current customers. But when you've actually on the books got large sums of money outstanding and you can't get them in, and in some cases, you're sitting there, well, you're looking at what you have in the bank and you're not knowing when the next check's going to come, and so you say, well, I got to stretch what I have here because I have to pay my employees. I have to pay the insurance bill. I have to pay the rent, utilities, and so forth and so on. My suppliers, I got to pay them. So, and if you don't, then you're out of business. So it's tough. So I'd say, yeah, by all means, if something you're interested in doing, do the research, find out what's necessary, recognize that you're not going to know how to do everything, and it's really not worth your time to learn specifically how to do it. You need to know what needs to get done and find out who's capable of getting that done and doing that. And if you can have a partnership where you can have that kind of division of labor, great. But if not, if you're lacking in those areas, then what you're going to have to do is hire outside help, whether you have a third party that does it, or you bring people in as full-time employees or whatever. But there is no panacea. You don't escape these things. So what you can do is minimize them and make sure that you're not wasting money or wasting time and pissing people off with unnecessary, show good, feel good, show the flag type stuff, which is, half of what comes out of corporate drug companies. So anyway, that's my experience, and definitely talk more about this in the future, because like I said, I definitely want to show you guys what automation is really all about instead of the hoopla. Okay. Oh, and Got That Funk is also has been a business owner, so I'm sure he's got something interesting to weigh in. So hopefully he will. I think he's up next. So anyway, take care. Catch you next time.